Hi everyone, this is Chapter 5 Adlerian Therapy Part 3 of Counseling 4500. Alright, now let's talk about some of the major techniques that are being used in Adlerian therapy. The first one is the family constellation, which we have talked a little bit briefly before. That is the client's evaluation of conditions that prevailed in the family when the child was, or the person was a young child. So that's kind of like getting to know the family atmosphere when they were growing up. So in that, we're going to talk about birth order, parental relationship, family values, an extended family, and then the culture that they were raised in. So let's talk about some of the questions that you might want to ask when it comes to the family constellation. Who was the favorite child? What was your father and mother's relationship with the children? Which child was most liked by each parent and in what respects? Who among the siblings was most different from you and in what ways? Who among the siblings was most like you and in what ways? What were you like as a child? Did your parents get along? How did they get along? In what ways did they both agree on things? And then how did they handle disagreements? And how did they discipline the children? Okay, so these are just some options that you can have when it comes to asking these questions. It's kind of like, do you remember creating a genogram? A genogram is kind of like a family tree, right? And then from there, you can kind of say, you can have your client actually kind of talk about it that way and say, who were you connected to? Whenever you had a problem, who would you go to talk to about those problems? The next one is called early recollections, and we talked about this earlier as well. Provide the earliest memory, age and time, feelings associated with that recollection. Out of the millions of early memories, we have selected some special memories that project the essential convictions and even the basic mistakes in our lives. So we'll remember those good parts and those bad parts, right, in our lives when we were children. And so with that woven together, they show how we understand ourselves and then also how we see the world. So here are some questions that might go along with the early recollections. What part stands out to you? What was the most vivid part of your early memory? If you played the whole memory like a movie and stopped it at one frame, what would be happening in that frame? Putting yourself in that moment, what are your feelings? What is your reaction? Isn't this all really interesting, right? I hope so. I find it really, really interesting because it really does give you an insight on the things that you remembered, how you remembered it, how your subjective reality was when it came to that specific thing. All right, phase 3 is encourage self-understanding and insight. Interpret the findings of the assessment as a way for promoting self-understanding and insight. So insight is defined as an understanding of the motivations that operate in a client's life. Have you ever heard the word cathartic, right? Cathartic or catharsis is kind of like an aha moment, like, oh yeah, that's the reason. Insight is very similar to that, right? It's just in this therapeutic framework, this is the word that we use instead. Interpretation is a client's underlying motives or for behaving the way that they do it in the here and now. So how did they see what was going on will probably affect how they are reacting now. Interpretations or suggestions presented in the form of open-ended questions. So you could ask these things. I could be wrong, but I'm wondering if you were doing this for a specific reason, right? So we're asking these questions to see if you're able to interpret it correctly. They will respond back to you and say, oh yes or oh no, or whatever it is that they're going to say. You can also say, could it be that relationship between your parents were blah, 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 right? Or is it possible that the way that you saw your brother treating you when you were younger was really out of love, not out of jealousy? Something like that, right? Clients are less defensive because they want to hear how you see what they're saying, and then they might want to clarify those misunderstandings if they believe that there's any misunderstandings. Lets the client know the limitations of the lifestyle or the style of their life that they have chosen. So hopefully that will also help them understand what's going on. All right, phase 4 is reorientation and re-education, putting insights into practice. So now that we've learned our, what has happened in the past and what we would want to do this time around so that it makes us happier, healthier when it comes to making choices, what are we going to do? So you're going to put insight into practice, discover new and more functional perspectives. So again, much more healthier ways of reacting to things. Encourage to take risks and make changes in your life when you recognize that things are unhealthy or bad or making you unhappy. you have the right to choose not to do those things. And then let's try it out and see what happens. Are you happier or are you not happier, right? Is it going to feel really weird when you do it? Yeah. Is it going to feel scary? Yes. But you have to go through those so you realize that there's actually other possibilities that can exist in your life. Reorientation, shifting rules of the interaction, the process, and the motivation, for you to live now, right? So maybe there are certain people that you should avoid for the rest of your life because they made you do very bad things. So, let's reorient our lives to make it a healthier life. The encouragement process. Courage happens when the people become aware of their strengths, realize that they are not alone, and that when they have a sense of hope, they can do these things, right? So courage, to be able to operate in the sense of fear, right? We said that earlier. Encouragement, showing faith in people, expecting them to assume responsibility for their lives and valuing them for who they are. So as a therapist, I would encourage you to be encouraging. I would suggest that you do this because, and it has to also, again, remember, I said this before, it has to be authentic and genuine. If you don't believe them, you might, and if you don't believe in a lot of your clients' changes, maybe therapy is not necessarily the best place for you to work. We want to have, hope and belief in people when we are working in this field, right? Life can be difficult, but making change is still possible. And I hope that you're authentic when you say and you tell your clients, oh yeah, I believe that you can do these things. All right, change in the search for new possibilities. Act as if they were the people that they want to be. So this is another activity that I can do is, show me what it looks like for you to be a happy person if you were not a happy person, right? Show me what it feels like if you were this type of person. Let them act it out so they can sort of get a feeling of it, because that might be encouraging of them so that they can pursue those goals. Ask to catch themselves when repeating old patterns of ineffective behavior. Again, change is really hard. We're going to fall back to what we are comfortable with. So we need to go, hey, that's actually not a good thing that we're doing. And then talk to ourselves, remind us that, this is not what we want to do anymore because it wasn't really helpful before. Must be willing to set tasks for themselves between sessions. Sometimes people call it homework, which is, they need to practice these things when they're not in counseling. All right, areas of application. So these are all the areas where you can do Adlerian therapy. I'm not going to read the list. It's a lot of places. Just look at it and you'll get a deeper explanation of this also in your textbook. All right, the Adlerian therapy from a multicultural perspective. First thing first, we talked about this at the beginning, which is that the globe, the world, most countries and societies do want happy citizens and also want a happy society, right? So social equality issues and social embeddedness of humans is so important and is universal. All right, importance of cultural context. It's always really important for us to understand where the value systems of each of the clients that you have come from. And you need to understand that, whether they are, let's say, Asian or African American or Latinx or white or Native American or whatever it is, you want to understand what their systems of values are, how they see the world, and respect those things. Emphasis on health as opposed to the pathology. So Adlerian is looking for the positive side, right? How can you be superior in the things that you need to do in yourself and in society, right? Not a competition. You want to focus on, basically doing the best for yourself. Holistic perspective on life. So remember how we said before, let's say if you got fired from a job, it's going to probably affect your love life or your social life or, your family life, right? So to understand that we need to focus on all of those things to be healthy. Value of understanding individuals in terms of core goals and purposes. So it's very similar to the first one, which is about your values and your cultural system or your cultural context. The ability to exercise freedom within the context of societal constraints. So, we do have rules and laws to protect everyone, right? So as long as you're operating and making decisions that are healthy, that are within the laws, you're good. Focus on prevention and development of a proactive approach in dealing with problems. Remember, we talked about the word proactive and reactive. So proactive is trying to do the best so that you can avoid, let's say, the bad stuff that might happen later, or whenever there's an emergency, you know how to react. We said that about, let's say, diabetes. You want to eat healthy, exercise first, so you'll never get it, right? But some people do choose to get the diabetes before they're like, okay, maybe now I need to change it. But again, it's going to be really hard, and you'll be unhealthy by that time as well, and sickly potentially, right? First, to advocate for women's equality when it comes to this. So that's fantastic. And we'll see this repeating over with other people's therapy or other therapeutic frameworks that you're going to learn about, and we'll focus on that later as well. All right, shortcomings from a diversity perspective, focus on the self as a center of change and responsibility. So we do realize that some cultures are collectivist, which means that it's all about the society or the group of people, the family members, first and foremost, right? And then you would then deal with your own issues yourself or on the side, or it's not valued as much as long as everyone else is happy. So it is still a very Western perspective, right? Make sure that you're good, you're happy, and then hopefully that will all spread into society as well. Family constellations is challenged when there are different family members, and we talked about that. This is we're in 2024 right now, and so your family system, lifestyle, and all that stuff, values, perspective are different than a person who did this in the 1800s, right, or the 1900s. They change. So, and we talked about that with blended families. Like Adler didn't necessarily talk about it, but we're obviously going to adjust it and talk about the fact that there are now blended families that exist, and how does that affect it when it comes to Adlerian therapy. All right, this I believe is the last slide, and we are done with this chapter. Bye.